How would a Jamaican inform you that his friend Raymond was a homosexual? Probably with something like, "Reggae man." In today's humble opinion, we're getting deep in The Journey Down, Chapter 3. I've never played either of the prequels to this point-and-click adventure. In fact, the only thing I would hazard to call The Journey Down in my experience would be the short stint of self-discovery I went through while traveling from the top of the stairs to the bottom. And boy, was there a lot of self-discovery packed into that little journey. I had bruises in so many places I didn't even know existed. And I now know precisely how much blood I can lose before going unconscious. While it wasn't necessary, strictly speaking, to have played the first two titles, I did feel as if I was missing a huge chunk of the story. Many stories start in media res, but that doesn't quite work out so well when you have to front load the game with exposition and lots of African names of people and places. In fact, if I had to point out the game's biggest weakness, it would be that front-loaded introductory period. It drained my enthusiasm for the game and gave me a lot of misconceptions about what I was getting into. Kinda like the first time you go to an adult play place only to be greeted by a leather daddy who informs you that there are no adult-sized building blocks, but plenty of adult-sized balls, which is actually a description as apt as it is colorful, given that I was starting to think that it was some sort of strange child's game. The three characters I was presented with were all simple and one-dimensional, two complete goofballs and one level-headed woman who served only as an expository information dump. That and the voice acting was like listening to a child speak with a mother or a care provider.
Stacy, is the sky blue?
Yes, Akimbo, the sky is very blue.
Wow, but why is the sky blue?
Well, you see, Akimbo, blue light is scattered more than other waves because they're shorter, and light is scattered by the tiny molecules in the air, which makes you perceive the sky as blue.
Oh, thanks. Stacy, why doesn't my mom love me?
Oh, Akimbo. Shit, man, I actually had to Google why the sky was blue. At any rate, those things combined with the general air of whimsy and simplified controls made it feel reminiscent of something akin to Pajama Sam. Thankfully, the game escalated relatively quickly, both literally in the fact that you rapidly rise from some sort of underworld into the overworld, and figuratively in that it starts out as I described and rapidly transitions into guns, turf wars, mass genocide. You know, the sorts of things only featured in cool children's point-and-click adventures. Never really thought about it until just now, but it's weird that it's called The Journey Down when the majority of the game is spent going up and staying there. It's also got some really weird political undertones. The overworld is run by Hillary Clinton, who apparently started her tenure with relative competence and success before being corrupted by Bernie Sanders' wife's second boyfriend. Together, they managed to turn an entire city into slums ravaged by turf wars and violence. Their answer is to evict all of this colorful minority cast from their homes and gentrify the city with a massive explosion. Ah, alternate history Detroit. They also have Donald Trump standing in front of a giant wall and tasering a Mexican for some reason, so it's kind of hard to get a read on which side of the fence they're standing on. At first, I wasn't very impressed with the humor of the story itself, but it grew on me in the same way that I didn't really get the Trailer Park Boys at first, but eventually settled into it. I started to enjoy the characters more and grew to appreciate its cheesy 80s style, complete with ill-fitting explosions edited in. Once more characters wove themselves into the story, their interactions became more interesting and their personalities more defined. They also did a fantastic job at handling a lot of the issues that tend to ruin the point-and-click adventure genre for me. They just have it so you have to click on something to inspect it, click and drag something from your inventory onto the scenery in an attempt to use it, or click and drag one item onto another so you can use them together. It's so simple a toddler can do it while still offering challenges requiring the brain power of an adult. I just wish I realized at the time that phrase meant I had to think about it. Sorry for harvesting your brain, Mr. Jenkins, it was for a good cause. Many of the puzzles had some pretty creative solutions, but with enough exploration, conversation, and attention to detail, there wasn't much in the way of hopelessly trying to use something on something else until you exhausted every option, and no item had an immediately recognizable use unless a scripted event had prompted you to look for something like that in the first place. Despite that, the items are still readily understood once the situation in which they're needed arises, as long as you give it a little lateral thought. Try saying that 10 times fast. Why the hell do I do this to myself? When it comes down to it, The Journey Down Chapter 3 earns a 7 out of 10. It's not a spectacular, emotionally evocative adventure. As far as I can tell, it's not a deep, probing narrative full of philosophical metaphor and psychological exploration. It's a silly game with silly characters and a lot of creativity with some oddball humor thrown into the mix. It addresses many of the issues that plague the genre with grace. It's not mind-numbingly long, but it's good for a relaxing evening in. It starts slow, but the pace manages to keep itself pretty steady once it gets going. Not to mention the artistry. Granted, the visuals took me a while to get used to. Sometimes the characters look like something straight out of a nightmare, but through their characterization and mannerisms, their appearances became less jarring. And as more characters are added in, the versatility of the style becomes more apparent. The background artwork was beautifully detailed with plenty of visual interest. Likewise, the music and voice acting fit wonderfully. To put it simply, it's a game that offers plenty of engagement and quality, but it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it hopes that you won't either. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the trip. Thank you everyone for watching, and special thanks to Sky Goblin for making this game a reality. The game was a blast, and I look forward to picking up the previous 2 installments to fully contextualize this adventure. A lot of fan-based criticisms say that they were even better, and I don't doubt it. Until next time, remember that failure is not the worst case scenario, to glow on with your bad selves, and stay awesome.